Okay, let's make a new video. And so, as you saw by the title, let me just read you a quote where I got the title from. Oh, the camera doesn't want to play around, doesn't want to play today. All right, let's have a look. So it's actually by Joseph Campbell. Campbell was an important part of my life when I was doing a lot of studies at that time, and it was during reading his book The Hero with a Thousand Faces years ago that there was a passage in there. I read this passage to you before. There was a passage in there which really finally awoke me to the reality that I am God. Now, I can't remember exactly how the passage went. Is that in essence what it was is when the soul of the dead finally arrived at the hall of Osiris, the soul of the dead was not named by his name as it was during his life, but he or she was named Osiris. In other words, it would have been John Osiris, Maggie Osiris, Marek Osiris. And that it clicks to me intuitively. We are all divine, we are God. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is this quote from Campbell. I don't remember reading this quote anywhere, so it might be something that I missed in one of his lectures perhaps. Anyway, this is what it is. Technology is not going to save us. Our computers, our tools, our machines are not enough. Exactly. We have to rely on our intuition, our true being. The last few words are one of the most important. Our true being. Intuition is your true being. This is when salvation comes, when you finally have recovered your intuitive part. This is what I call the divine feminine. Actually, this is what it is, the divine feminine. The core of the feminine or the intuitive mind is intuition. I understand that many of you will say that that feminine is deeper than that. It's nature, it's our body, it's the energy, it's everything. But the core of the feminine, the divine feminine, sacred feminine is intuition, our true being. In other words, your inner being, your true being is intuition. Yeah? So when you have finally made your journey to the center and you have recovered whatever it is that you need to recover, the divinity within you, the spirit, the core of that is intuition. Do you remember my dream when I went to the cave, finally entered the cave, and I was led there by my inner guide, that woman, that feminine figure all in white, and she brought me in front of that huge flowering tree inside the cave, and out of the tree was bubbling up a stream from its roots, and she said, drink. This is where many men of old found their gold. Gold is the image of intuition. So is she, so is the tree, so is the water, especially fresh water. Anyway, so what I wanted to say is that technology is not going to save us. Our computers, our tools, our machines are not enough. Exactly. I'll tell you in a moment why. We have to rely on our intuition, our true being. When I write my poetry, for instance, especially when I write my books, not so much the mystic soul, because that's just a collection of my poetry. So it's quite easy when it comes to grammar, but I am hopeless at grammar. So when I was writing Where We Dreamed a Single Dream, everything I wrote in there is simply I just sat there and I was writing for 2-3 weeks until everything that needed to come out went out. It was done, but the grammar was horrible. So first I had a few helpers, especially Pamela Ward, you know who you are. She did editing for me once, twice, 3 times until she couldn't do it anymore. So, but I still felt that it needed to be edited more. So what did I use? I turned to technology. I turned to AI. But then it, you know, like Quiltbot and Grammar Checker and all these things on the internet. You can find them if you look for them. You can find them. They're there. They're quite good. You know, it's usually a free service. You can pay for it if you like, but it's enough for the free service is enough. And what happened was, what I'm trying to say here is that if I was, for instance, to turn to AI or to Quiltbot or to anyone and say, can you write a book for me with what I wanted to write about, with the few keywords that I needed I wanted to stress, and what I have written about intuition and so on in my books, the stories, it would have never written what I was able to write intuitively. It would have given me technology, the AI would have given me the pre-approved narratives. I've tried using AI a few times just for this, just to see how how prejudiced it is, how it will go along with the approved narrative, the religious approved narrative, the political approved narrative, the societal approved narrative, especially against things like intuition or dreams or visions and so on, or mysticism, especially mysticism. But when I was writing from intuition, all that came out. There was no prejudice. It is just there as it has been. The imagery, the information, the messages that I was receiving while writing the book, you know, I've been receiving most of my life. But when I was writing the book, they were archetypal. In other words, eternal. So when it comes to this, technology is not going to save us. You can't rely on technology to give you the real deal, if you like, the things behind the surface that are, you know, the more important, the archetypal things, the mystical things. It's not going to be there, because the technology can only give you what society knows at large. It cannot give you the information that is hidden from us, especially now because of the rational mind that's taken over the thinking. The rational mind, by the way, is the masculine. The masculine is the rational mind. That's your left side of the brain. And the irrational, we call it still irrational, the intuitive is the right side of the intuitive mind. That's the feminine, that's the masculine, yeah? The two need to work together. So what I'm trying to tell, so what I will tell you now is, what I was saying now is, I wrote the book intuitively. The right information that needed to come out, that was communicate from the spirit, from the soul, was there. I only used technology to help me with grammar. Technology couldn't have written what I have written. It's not in our conscious psyche, as it were, not at large. It's there in mythology, in depth psychology, in Jungian psychology. Joseph Campbell writes about it. You know, you have Anne Baring writing about it. Many Jungians and people, you know, that have gone deeper into that level of the depth psychology, the archetypal, write about it, spoke about it. But in our mainstream media, in our mainstream society, it's missing. So technology for this work, for the work of spirit, for the work of actually diving that deep, to be able to speak about these things, the eternal things as we call them, you cannot rely on technology. It's not going to know. Yeah. And another important point with this is that, here in the quote says, technology is not going to save us. What it means to be saved. Saved means that when you have actually made it to the center. To the center, you might not even know that you're divine, but you have recovered your intuitive part, your feminine. That's what it means to be saved, because then you no longer need to rely on society to tell you how to live your life. You know, the prejudices, the programming, the narrative, usually what it is just my tribe, my people, my family, my religion, my language, my geographical location. nationalism, if you like, religious nationalism. We see this all the time. And to hell with others. But the reality is much wider and much deeper. So intuition can show you this, that beyond the borders, there are no borders. If you look at planet Earth from space, there are no borders, just one single humanity, together with the animals and the nature and everything else, that we live on this one country Earth. There are no, yes, there are different religions, and there are different languages, different geographical location, different flag colors, different governments call themselves different countries. But underneath all that, there isn't. It's just one human. And intuition, when you finally get that, when you finally have recovered that intuitive voice inside of you, it can show you this. And then you no longer rely on the childish attitude towards others. That is just me, I'm superior and others are not. We see this all the time, especially in religion. Old Testament is full of this. You know, survival of my tribe and to hell with others. We see this, played out in a terrible, terrible way in Palestine, in the Middle East. One, people believe themselves to be chosen, and the others are what they call them Amalek, and they're not human, so they have the right to dominate them, get rid of them, really. So that's the childish attitude, the old attitude. Without the feminine, you cannot get that, because the feminine is everywhere, everything. And it dives deeper and shows you the collective oneness. And one of the reasons, for instance, if you're talking about Judaism, that it's still prevailing in there is because Judaism got rid of the feminine very early. It got rid of the feminine some 600 or 700 BC. They have got rid of all the temples to Shakara, to the goddess. And before there was the union of God and the goddess, Yahweh and the goddess were one. Later the priests, I can't remember the names of the priests now, that when the writing took over, when the reading took over, and the books were written and so on, they got rid of all the old temples, they got rid of her groves and sacred trees and so on, they got rid of her completely. And now we still have the leftovers of this, that there is only this tribe, this people, this land, and this, that's been chosen, given, complete nonsense. Yeah, so that's why intuition is so important. But without the intuitive, without the recovering of the intuitive inner voice, you cannot be a light onto yourself and have a wider and deeper view of our life here on planet Earth. Yeah, one of the symbols for intuition is light. That's why we say being a light onto yourself, not always being an intuition onto yourself, if you like. Yeah. So when you made that journey, when you have finally recovered and we finally trust your own intuition, that's when saving comes into it. That's what we call the savior. They call it, for instance, in New Testament, Jesus is a savior. But Jesus is in a older mythological archetypal sense. He is the psychopomp, or he is the one that leads the souls of the dead to the afterlife. In other words, he is a symbol of intuition. That's why we see so many pictures in Christianity and symbols. His heart is open and there are streams of light coming out of his heart. One half is blue, the other half is red. The union of the opposites, that's your intuition. Yeah? So technology is not going to save us. It's not enough. You have to recover your own source, your own true being, your intuitive, the feminine part. Like I said before, lots of people are going to jump up and down that feminine is not just intuition. Yes, it is nature, it is the body, it is the animals, it is the energy, it is the whole thing. But the core, what I'm talking about, when you're going into the mythological center, your archetype, center, the divine being, like Campbell calls it here, true being is intuition. and we have these stories in all our mythologies and all over the world. The journey inward and backward to the source, to the sacred temple, to the center, to the sacred grove, like my journey to the temple, to the cave, and that huge flowering tree, and the water trickling from its roots, and the feminine, the guide, the inner guide, giving me water in a container, in the Grail. This is the Holy Grail, the recovery of the Holy Grail, and the light and gold mean exactly the same thing. That's why the alchemists, the whole work was the transformation of lead into gold, the transformation of unconsciousness into consciousness, or in other words, transformation of rational mind into intuitive mind. Yeah, I can give you lots of examples when technology works together. For instance, technology is your car. Today, cars are full of, we can say even the old car was technology, but it can't do without you. You are the intuitive part that drives it. Can you see? Nowadays, you have this so-called smart cars that can drive themselves, but they can't without the human input, and the human input is the intuition. Yeah. Even now, people say, oh, the AI will do it, but the AI cannot do it without the human input either, because it works from the collective society's information. It does not have its own access, intuitive access to the soul, to the spirit, to the deeper and wider dimension of life. The invisible dimension, sometimes they call it unconscious or energy or Akashic records. There's something out there to which you can plug in, and your inner voice, your intuitive inner voice, is going to give you the information, the insights coming from there, the directions coming from there. The AI can't do that. It has to only rely on whatever it is already in the human in culture, in our society. It can't do it by itself or connect to that deeper dimension. So even though our new cars have, you say, oh, they drive themselves, they only drive themselves within the confines of what society knows. But you, as a driver, that's a completely different thing. If you have a connection to the eternal, to the spirit, you don't need sat nav or anything. You just know. Have you ever for instance, had this experience of driving and suddenly something said to you, or you got this feeling, oh, there's gonna be a police speed trap just ahead, and 2 or 3 seconds later you slow down? I've known people that haven't and got caught, and they got that feeling, they got the intuitive warning, but they didn't listen. But you listened, you slow down, and there it is. It happened to me just last week. I was on the freeway really early in the morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning. There's not many cars, so there I am, way above the speed limit, and suddenly I got this feeling. No, there was a truck or something in front of me, and I had to slow down. And there, on the left side, there was a cop car hiding behind a bridge. So that's how this works. Technology is not going to save us, but my intuition saved me. Yeah. All right, that's what I wanted to speak to you today about, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.